Hello, hello. Welcome back, you guys, to another episode of Chats with Cath with me, Cath. This week, I am going to have to put a trigger warning on the content that I'm going to be divulging and discussing, and it's on body dysmorphia. So this content is not suitable for children or viewers under the age of 13, and this topic is quite sensitive and quite loaded in a way, so please do not take offense with it. Please do not take this with you and take an opportunity to be horrible and mean, because there are a lot of people who go through this and people who struggle with this. So be kind, and remember, kindness is free. Okay, so you guys, let me get comfortable here. I should have actually bought myself a nice cup of tea because of this topic. But the context of this episode, and just to ensure that everybody is not offended, I did give that disclaimer warning at the beginning. But the reason why I'm discussing this topic is because I have suffered from this body dysmorphia issue for a very, very long time, since I was 10 years old. And I understand that this is going to be very hard for people to hear, and it's probably going to be triggering for some people. And for those of you who want to be nasty in the comments, please, if you have nothing nice to say, please keep it to yourself. Don't listen to this episode. Come back another day. That is totally fine. But for those who are interested to hear about this and discuss it further, by all means, we can reach out to each other in my email, chatswithcath@gmail.com, or on YouTube. We can have a discussion in the comment section about it. Again, please be nice. We're not here to be enemies of progress or be horrible human beings to other people, because this is a very sensitive topic. And also on Instagram, please drop nice comments. Please. I beg. I beg. This is a serious topic, and I'm doing my best to approach this with caution and with compassion too. So going into what is body dysmorphia? Well, body dysmorphia is seen as people's perception of their bodies in a very cruel and distorted way. And that's like a more academic way of saying what it is. It's an unhealthy way of perceiving yourself and your body, in a sense. And always finding ways to either change it or tweak it, and never really coming or attaining that level of perfectionism. Highlight to last week's episode, but level of perfectionism with your body. And that's why you get a lot of people who do plastic surgery or reconstructive surgery or implants, etc., etc. I'm not shading any of you. Whatever you want to do with your body, you are 100% entitled to do so. 100% entitled to. I'm just going to be discussing mostly my own experience with body dysmorphia and my journey in that effect. So my experiences with body dysmorphia started at a young age, as I mentioned earlier on in the episode. And I would say I was around 10 years old when I started to understand what people would say or think about me. And this kind of started with comments from either external people like in school, like teachers, people outside, family, friends, family, even intermediate family. And it was a very difficult thing to understand and take on, because there is a very warped perception in terms of female beauty. And already, with the way the world is, it has evolved and changed, and the standards of beauty have changed. But I do have to address this. But back then, when this was happening, the ideal body perfection type was being completely stick thin and lighter in complexion, and other aspects of beauty that people find attractive. And in terms of media, that's what was personified or defined as beauty. And it's unfortunate because beauty is not just one thing. It's a construct of many things. It doesn't just have to be like how you look as a person. It also is how you are as a person. And I know it sounds like I'm being cliched, and I'm not trying to make this a motivational talk or anything like that. I'm literally just trying to have a discussion in terms of this painful experience and life experience that I struggled with, and I will not lie, I still struggle with to this day. So in terms of experiences that I want to delve into, this is a bit of a hard one. I would say that I still suffered from bad eating habits. So when I say bad eating habits, I mean anorexia, bulimia, and overeating. And because of the early introduction in terms of how beauty was perceived and how people were perceiving me as a young, impressionable child, it was I think it was a little unfair to put me in that position where I would question whether or not I was pretty enough or if I was thin enough to be deemed desirable or to be deemed pretty enough to be someone that people would consider like to be a friend, to be pretty enough to be in family photos, or to be pretty enough to pretty much do specific things. So how it all started and how my bad eating habit started was when I was in boarding school, and I noticed that there weren't any fat people or overweight people or chubby people in my grade. And that was because the school was quite strict and ensured that people used to do like a whole host of physical activity, whether you were running, whether you were doing hockey, netball, whatever it was, whatever sport or physical activity they had available, they would ensure that children were participating in all these things to ensure that we were making sure that we were fit or we were not gaining unnecessary weight. And they did say that. I know it sounds wild and crazy, but they did say that in the school. I remember an assembly where they were like, yep, nobody is going to be wheezing up the stairs or anything like that. And in my mind, because that's what was like indoctrinated at such an early stage, I would think, oh, okay, this is normal, this is how it is, kind of thing, and never think much of it. But as a child, I depend on the people around me or the adults in a sense, to educate, healthy eating and all these things. But then it was done in such an aggressive way that was borderline unhealthy and pure evil. And in terms of that, it morphed into something even worse when I started going to high school, because then it became more prevalent there because I went to an all-girl Catholic school, and there was a lot of competition on everything. And when I mean everything, whether it's academics, sports, cultural activities, whatever it was, the competition was tense. Like you could cut it with a knife. That's how intense it was. And competition is good. And I'm glad that it was in a setting where you were with other females who were competing to, be the best versions of themselves so that they can be the best female leaders and empowerers. And a lot of people that came from that school and who are still my friends today are those people. However, there's also a dark side. And I think we should not ignore or glaze over it. There is a dark side because there was also the same culture that I had experienced in my formative years where being overweight was deemed unacceptable and unattractive. And that is dangerous, especially for teenage girls who are still trying to come into their own and trying to develop the type of person that they hope to be one day. And with me, it was extremely dangerous because, as I discussed in a previous episode, I have a tendency to try be a perfectionist and do things a specific way, and people's opinions used to matter to me to a point where it influenced what happened next. And then I started dabbling in bulimia, and bulimia is pretty much eating food and then throwing up. And so that is a very short definition as to what that is, but that's pretty much what happened. And I noticed that that was the easiest way for me to eat in front of my family and ensure that in appearances sakes, or when I'm around family or friends or family friends and stuff like that, I would eat and then they would not know if I was throwing up or anything like that. And in my culture, or most African cultures, wasting food is a big no-no. And what I was doing, when I think about it in retrospect, was a waste of food. But that is what I was doing to myself to make sure that I maintained an unattainable level of beauty that was ingratiated in the media, in people's comments towards me, in how I was treated differently. Because when I came from primary school, I wasn't skinny, but I was on the chubby side. So I was healthy. I wasn't unhealthy. And also considering I was chubby and I was also doing athletics and cross country and all these other wild sports and doing pretty well in them. But it was still not enough. I was not pretty or skinny enough. And that was a level of beauty that people thought to emphasize. And it really got into my head to a point where I started dabbling in bulimia. And then it escalated when I went into university. And that's when nobody was really paying attention to me that much anymore, because I dropped a lot of weight to the point where I was looking completely unhealthy and malnutritioned at some point. And I was looking malnutritioned to the point where at the time, you've met my sister in a previous episode, Chicken. She was around her primary school days, and the way I was so underweight was to the point I could actually we would be the same size in clothes. And she's 7 years old, and I am 18. Not healthy. Not healthy at all. And it became even more destructive in varsity, to the point where I was so skinny and I had such an unhealthy relationship with food. And I kept this unhealthy relationship with food to the point where I would get validation and affirmation, where people were like, "Oh, no, you're so skinny and beautiful." And I would think to myself, okay, so cool, I must continue. I should just not eat, kind of thing. And it was terrible. And then it went into other dangerous territory where I would start smoking, which is frowned upon in my family. And the only way I could keep the weight off was when I was smoking. And I would be able to eat and then smoke and then drop the weight. I don't know. There's no science or logic behind it, but that is how I was thinking, and that is how I was putting these things through. But then it became really bad, because then there was a period where I was also binge drinking, and that was horrible. That was a horrible, horrible period in my life. Like, I felt better with being lucid and just like neither here nor there. And it was so unhealthy. Eventually I had to stop. Eventually I had to get help and find a better, healthier way to have a healthier relationship with my food, and then also have a healthier relationship with myself, because this whole time it had been close to 2 decades of me being completely destructive and completely disrespectful to myself and my body, and how I was treating my body. And I would say that like therapy 100% saved my life. I mean, if I had not gone to therapy, I don't know what I would have done. And I went to therapy because my grandmother, who was still alive at the time, but unfortunately she's passed now, she's the one who actually picked up and noticed and was just like, "Oh my goodness, I think Catherine has an eating disorder. Like, what's going on here?" And from there, I started getting help. I went for counseling and started, unlearning the horrible habits and thoughts that I was having towards myself with food. So through that, I started building a healthier relationship with food. And then from there, it started getting better. However, it kind of backfired a bit because then I went into overeating. And this was like in my mid-20s. And in my mid-20s, I would like eat and eat and eat whatever just to make myself feel better, because in a way I was compensating for the 2 decades where I was starving myself so that I can look presentable and acceptable for people around me, Yeah. And with that, I gained a lot of weight, like from what I looked like a decade ago to now, day and night. And it's hard because like now the horrible comments that used to come through to me as a child are now happening again. And it's hurtful. But then also in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm not going to go back to how I was before. But it's so easy for me to snap back into that like unhealthy behavior so quick, because there are many days where I would literally forget to eat, but then I haven't really forgotten, you know what I mean? And that's not healthy. And then I'll drop the weight. And then there are days where I would overeat and then I'll feel disgusting. and then I'll go back into what I was doing when I was in primary school, which was throw up. And it's horrible. It's a vicious cycle. So I have to constantly go through my food diaries and constantly remind myself that nutrition is key. Eating healthy is not an evil thing. You know, your body needs nourishment, your body needs love. You need to respect your body because it does a lot. Like, your brain is thinking consistently, even when you're sleeping. It needs the sustenance. Your body needs energy so that, you know, you can do like tasks like what I'm doing now, recording a podcast and all these things. So therapy 100% saved my life because it definitely put me into perspective in terms of really looking within and understanding the root of like how this whole cycle and this whole journey started and to where I am now. Like, I'm a healthier person now. Some people would say I'm a little overweight. That's fine. That's your business. Like, your opinion of me is none of my business, honestly speaking. But I feel that from where I was before to where I am now, it's much better. And I've had to really look into like making sure that whatever I do for myself, it is for me, and it's healthy, and it's not destructive and mean and like completely life altering, because I still struggle with it, because these thoughts of the body dysmorphia do not go away. They stay with you for a very, very long time. And it's hard to talk about because I do all the things where I eat well, I exercise and all these things. But then I'm not going to lie and say that I don't relapse and go back to either overeating or not eating or where I throw up or all these things. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen or days like that don't happen. They do. And I feel like I've become better in managing like how I approach these things and really learn to love myself. And that goes back to episode 2, guys. Episode 2, we're on episode 14. That was 12 episodes ago, where I was busy discussing self-love and like how important it is to like really appreciate the person you are, because you're the only one who's going to really love and nurture yourself to the whole. And this is why I wanted to talk about this today, because I don't want to be that person who is not forthcoming and sharing that like it took a lot for me to be brave enough to come and really open up and not to hide that part of my life, and to talk about it as well, hopefully, so that other people know that they're not alone and other people know that I understand. Like, something like this is not something that is easy to handle or manage. It's a consistent journey. And yeah, that's how I feel about that. I think I'm going to end it there. And please, guys, I emphasize again, please be nice in the comment section. Please be nice on Instagram. Please be nice, because it's a hard topic. It's something that I'm still struggling with. And there are probably other people out there who are struggling with. And we need to find better ways to communicate and be more cognizant of like how we treat others in turn because of it. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
With that being said, you guys, go with God and see you soon in the next episode. Ciao!